We have the pleasure of presenting data from our seventh, not annual, but our seventh volume of a research project that we call the Life and Times of Cybersecurity Professionals. It is a quantitative research study of ISSA members, and ISSA, as my two distinguished guests will talk about, is an international organization of cybersecurity professionals. So we survey them every year. We want to know what they think of their careers, how their careers are going. We want their impressions on their job as it relates to the business, and we want to understand what they plan to do in the future. So I'll get into, these things never work for me. I'll try again. No? There we go.
My microphone. There we go. Here's
Manual
my
way.
microphone.
You've probably seen this disclaimer, and I won't dwell on that. And we're missing a slide, but that's okay. So I'll go on to this. We'll go on to the data right away. So in our survey this year, 65% of cybersecurity professionals that we surveyed said their job is more difficult today than it was 2 years ago. And that is a distressing trend that continues. So that has been consistent over the last number of years. Now, we took that 65%, we said, tell us why that is the case. And these are the top answers. So the cybersecurity complexity and workloads have increased. So if you are a technology vendor, and there are many technology vendors at this conference, this is your challenge, is helping cybersecurity professionals overcome, or at least address, the complexity and the increasing workloads. Cyber threats in my organizations have increased. We're all facing that. They're more sophisticated, and it makes your job, or it makes a cybersecurity job more difficult. And then regulatory compliance has become more complex. And we saw SEC regulations, we see NIS2 in the EU coming into play this year, and that is not going to subside at all. So those are the top three, and Sean and Curtis, I'm wondering what your takeaways are.
Go ahead, Curtis.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us this morning. Well, if you were in the keynotes yesterday afternoon, all of this was addressed by both Antony Blinken, Kevin Mandia, and Hugh Thompson. They all said it, but said it a little bit differently. Hugh Thompson said it was burnout, and it had to do with liability that we're under, reporting, and things of that nature, and he even mentioned ransomware. Kevin Mandia called it economic pressures and the criminal groups, and Antony Blinken talked about the critical issues that the nation now is having to address because of this. So I would say that this is a reflection of all of that.
So to further expand that, so Curtis and I are both practitioners and we're academics. So we also get to talk to the students, and not all of our students are coming right out of high school. So we have people in mid-transition, so we get to have these discussions with them as well. And some of the things that we see is, we've been coming out here for so many years. So last year, it wasn't AI. This year, it's AI. Last year, what was it? Zero trust. What was the year before? API security. So think about whatever the new shiny thing is that we need to be focusing on in our profession. It's a significant change in the way that we need to adapt, learn, and then execute. And the adversary, if they're motivated with all the time in the world, that makes it much more difficult for us to find the right talent with the right skill set, with the right trade craft, OT, embedded systems, IoT. It's not just protecting your servers and your endpoints anymore.
We also asked about career satisfaction, and what you'll notice here is that 42% of those that we surveyed, and this is despite what we just saw, that the challenge of being a cybersecurity professional is increasing over the years. 42% said that they are very satisfied with their cybersecurity career, and I've got to say, Curtis and Sean, that is just a testament to people's dedication to the mission that we're at. And that's, to me, this is so important because sometimes I come to RSA and I feel like this conference is dedicated to hooray for cybersecurity technology. And it's not. It's about the mission that we're all in. It's about protecting data and really protecting lives when we think about protecting the critical infrastructure. Now, it's not all rosy. That's 42%, so that's less than half. There's some that are somewhat satisfied, and what would concern me, if I were a CISO, is that percentage that is either somewhat dissatisfied or very dissatisfied. So I think it's really important for CISOs to keep their finger on the pulse of their staff and make sure that if there is dissatisfaction, that they're addressing that as much as they can.
Well, can you guys hear me? Yesterday, this was also talked about, but the fact that there are 40,000 people here this week, you guys have come from 120 countries, which I thought was absolutely amazing. But yesterday it was talked about that this is a result of coming off the pandemic. In 2020, when everything started and we all went home, then that's when the dissatisfaction kind of decreased. In 2022, this came up, the satisfaction increased because I guess we were comfortable in our homes. You know, we all were thinking, well, great, no commutes. Then last year, the dissatisfaction has returned. I'm wondering if that's a correlation with the return to work, where there has been an initiative for everybody to return to work for the brick and mortar, if that's a reflection, or if it's the pressures of the economic pressures, the criminal, the organization of the criminal attacks that we're under, that sort of thing. But I'm very encouraged to see the satisfaction that is as good as it is.
You know, and I'll say that, you know, we still have a cultural issue when we talk about information security, cybersecurity as a profession, and it's the way that we approach it with those other people in our organization. It's a cultural issue. So is it we got to get to market quicker? This is new shiny new thing. We need to adopt it. We'll figure out the security later. I think that's part of the dissatisfaction. And so as information cybersecurity professionals, we need to be able to look internally at the integrity aspect of how we do our job. And if you're not satisfied, it might be time to move on.
Now, related to that, the next question was, what are the things that make your job satisfactory to you? And this was interesting. I've been doing this, I've been associated with this project since its beginning. This is the first year that compensation didn't come up as the number one answer. So what drives satisfaction? Leadership's team commitment to strong cybersecurity. So you'll hear a lot about cybersecurity culture at this conference. ENISA, the European organization that focuses on cybersecurity with the EU, they put out documents about cybersecurity culture. But this basically says that if an organization really invests in cybersecurity culture, that is going to lead to strong satisfaction with the cybersecurity team. And of course, the opposite is true too. So compensation came out number 2. Everyone wants to have kind of a market acceptable compensation, or at least equitable compensation. But that really struck me, is that it's really the commitment to cybersecurity that matters. I can probably find the money if I shop around as a cybersecurity professional, but I do want to work at that company that really values cybersecurity.
It is. If you love your team, then even if you're doing more with less, even if your team is having to do more with less tools or less people, if you just love your dream team or whatever fortunate situation you have, I think that's what this is probably indicating. Don't you, John?
Yeah, I'll expand on that a little bit more. Another one of our board members is the CISO for Oracle, Marian Davidson. She and I were having a conversation yesterday, and it's really, if you're a leader in an organization for information cybersecurity, and you were to win the lottery tomorrow, because we don't want to get hit by a bus, we got to go the other way, and we were to walk away from our organization, your team should be able to still continue on like it was not a big deal. So again, if you've got a good culture from the top all the way down. I worked for a biofarm company in 2017 as a CISO. I reported to the CTO, who reported the CIO, who reported the CFO, who reported the CEO, that reported the board of directors. How effective do you think my message was? The culture wasn't good. I lasted 18 months and I had to move on.
Yeah, I also want to point out here, and I'd love your comments that, and this is really small for me, so I'm 38% said the organization provides support and financial incentives enabling the cybersecurity staff to advance their careers. So it's that investment in the cybersecurity staff. And there's always this argument, well, if I train my cybersecurity staff, they're just going to go out and find another job, so it's not worth the investment. I know ISSA, when I talk to ISSA members, they just shake their head at that false assumption. So I'm just wondering, is that jive with the way you look at cybersecurity?
Yeah, if you train them and they leave, what if you don't train them and they stay, right? That's another adage that we talk about. We want to, I mean, look at the pace of technology, right? So we look at one of the Intel founders, Moore's Law. It's taught in business school. The pace of the silicon chip will increase every 18 months. It will double in every 18 months to 2 years. Well, in the 1980s, we started using that same adage for all technology, right? So the pervasiveness of technology, the innovation drives that you need to train your staff on the new technologies, information, cybersecurity, you mentioned regulatory, compliance, which is stressing everybody. You got to be educated in all of that stuff. People have to know why they're doing the job that they're doing.
Well, I think it has to do with the reason that you guys are all here. We're here to learn more, to grow, to collaborate, to communicate, to network, and knowing more about the topics that just we're exposed to this week is a way to advance our career and be seen as value creation to when you go back to your teams. So I think that, I don't really agree with you train your teams and you'll leave. I think you empower your teams, even if you don't have the budget that you did, and maybe just choosing to come to something like this. And thank goodness, I don't know what got you here today, but I think that's part of it, to advance your careers in whatever way, and then, to provide value for the organization.
Now, there is a downside, and we all know this. We talked about, or Hugh Thompson talked about burnout, and we survey, or part of our survey is to look at this every year. So 55% of those that we surveyed said that at least half of the time they find their job stressful. And of course, that's a pretty unsustainable pace, and that you're going to have attrition when that happens. And then related to that, we said, okay, well, what are the most stressful aspects of your job or your career? And you can see some of the answers here. So an overwhelming workload. And this is, to me, this is distressing because, as you'll see later on, that workload increases every year. And you can't expect to get more out of people who are already overburdened, overworked. Working with disinterested business managers, that causes stress. And we saw the other side of that. What makes you satisfied? Working with very interested business managers, working in a company that has a great cybersecurity culture. Finding out about IT initiatives kind of after the fact. So this is the old throw it over the wall to the security team just before we go into production with our applications. That doesn't work. And then the constant emergencies. So if you are a firefighter, you do have downtime and then massive adrenaline rushes when there's a fire. But firemen burn out when there are constant fires. Any kind of emergency worker does. And it's the same with cybersecurity professionals. So our job at this conference is to figure out, again, how do we address these things? And I'm wondering what your thoughts are.
So again, you're going to hear culture, always you're going to hear culture, and that drives some of it, right? If you have positive managers, positive leaders, positive business leaders that understand what they're contributing to the business, you know, when I do my presentations in my trainings, I tell everybody like 80% of your business processes are automated. You're using some type of technology to drive and run your business. Well, we need to look at how that fits into information or cybersecurity so we understand why we need to protect that. And for burnout, I look at the culture as number one, and then the other two factors that I look at are processes. So if we don't have risk management, we don't have change management, configuration management, that really, back to your point, drives some of the reasons why we're having to be so reactive on different things, and it's extending our duty day and the stress because, oh, somebody made a change, guess what? We have a disruption to the business, we're losing money because we have a lack of productivity. I think those are the top three things I would say based on my experience.
How many of you guys work remotely? Do you find that your day is longer? I mean, where's your lunch hour? Do you have to carve it out to take a walk around the block? When is your breakfast time with your family or your evening time? I think that's one thing that came out of the pandemic and the return to work is everybody now is scheduling calls throughout the day. And I bet we could take a poll and there's just probably a wide range of when your day starts and when it ends, depending on the day. But days are longer, and that causes the stress. Our new threats are maybe different, maybe heightened. Kevin Mandiant called it economic pressures from criminal groups and nation-state attacks. But to us, all of us would have different stress, and then we have to figure out how to manage our stress. When can we take that walk? When can we walk away? Can we put a load of clothes? I talked to someone last week on a meeting, and he said, I'm sorry, I cut out. I was trying to put clothes in the dryer. And I thought, really? Okay, well, at least you're honest. So I think that maybe these responses, John, I think were excellent. But there's a layer, if you peel back, of what really the stress is. We do have a lot more on our plate. It's a result of a lot of things. It's now, I would like to say we all have to consciously find a way to just manage that and get it back into balance because it is a different environment.
Yeah, and those of you who do research or who are research geeks like me will notice that at the top, 3 responses were allowed. And so you've got the cumulative effect here of people saying, I'm stressed because I'm overworked, because I'm working with disinterested managers, and IT is doing things that I don't know about. So it is a cumulative thing. And again, as a CISO, you have to fight for those things with the business, but you also have to manage them and make sure your staff is supported, feels like they're supported, and it's not just a constant job full of stress.
And it is a different environment. Those of you that didn't raise your hand, that have returned to work, and then having to deal with those that are remote, it's just a different mix of things now in this environment and where teams are geographically located too.
Okay, in this slide, we're asking about career attrition. So the top bar, the question was, have you ever considered leaving your job? And the top bar is, I've considered leaving my current job, so that's consistent with what I just said, but the bottom bar is, I've considered leaving the cybersecurity profession entirely. And you can see that 26% say that they regularly consider leaving their current job, and 41% say they do occasionally. Now, there is a cybersecurity skill shortage. We'll get to the data on that. And so recruiters are constantly trying to poach people from one company to another. Lord knows that's really true 40 miles south of here in the Silicon Valley. So if you are a cybersecurity professional and you're not satisfied with your job, you should have other opportunities, which is probably why you're considering leaving. On the bottom, though, that's really concerning to me because these are people who've considered leaving the profession entirely, and I have some more data on that I'll show you in a minute. But 11% say, yeah, regularly, I'm thinking about leaving the profession, and 28% say, I'm doing so occasionally. So that's in an atmosphere of a cybersecurity skills shortage where cybersecurity professionals need to be on top of their game in new areas like artificial intelligence, like understanding the threat landscape and the latest tactics, techniques, and procedures that the adversaries are using. We need more good people. We don't need to lose good people. So is that as concerning to you as it is to me?
I have a little bit different viewpoint because 40,000 of us are here and we're not leaving.
Well, okay.
So, and we're returning. How many of you have come to this conference for 5 years or more? Or, okay, 10 years or more? Anybody? Or is this between 1 and 5 years then? How many of this is your first time? Would you come
Wow.
back? I mean, this is an amazing opportunity. So I don't see the attrition. I know that, we'll address that in a minute, but I just wondered what the mindset was at the time, you know, if it was the workload or the stress or why somebody said, I'm just gonna mark this one, I'm leaving. I've had a bad week, you know, if it was the mindset or if this can be considered a pulse of the whole globe.
Yeah, I would say for, you know, if people are leaving but not leaving the industry, it might be, again, we use the word culture, or maybe there's a lack of process or lack of advancement. Those are career decision makers. But if you're leaving the industry, and I've had conversations with some people, and they're like, well, you know, cybersecurity just isn't for me. I'm like, well, so what do you do for your job? Well, you know, I write policies and all this other stuff, and that's not really what I wanted to do. Well, like going to med school for 8 years, right? So when you graduate, you have a license to practice. There are so many other disciplines in our industry that you can consider, and sometimes, you know, we need to mentor and educate those people where else they might be able to thrive instead of leaving the industry altogether.
So Curtis, this sort of addresses what you said. This is of the people, and you can see this is a subset of the total population. And the question was, you indicated that you've considered leaving the cybersecurity profession over the last 12 to 18 months. And what are the reasons for that consideration? And you're seeing a pattern here with job satisfaction and job dissatisfaction. But the biggest reason was stress. There's a high stress associated with a cybersecurity career. Some people will not be able to manage that, and that's okay. That's life, and that's if there's a mental health issue with your profession, you shouldn't just stick it out. You should address that, of course. Lack of leadership's commitment to cybersecurity. That's a constant theme with culture, again. And then a cybersecurity career does not provide a good work-life balance. Now, I keep using this example, but as a CISO, it is my job, and I'm not a CISO, but I'm just suggesting that if I were, it's my job to make sure that there is good life-work balance, that my staff does feel appreciated and does have the resources that they need to succeed. It won't be perfect, but part of my job is absolutely protecting all of my digital assets, but it's also protecting my human assets as well, or my human resources. So does that change your mind at all, Curtis, or is that consistent with maybe they just had a bad day?
Yeah, these are all good responses. You know, all fair responses because everybody's situation is different and their environment is different. So I just would love to dive deeper sometime into the psychology behind this, but of course we're not given that information.
Yeah, we need to complement this with some qualitative interviews, but I totally agree. Sean, anything?
Yeah, I mean, we keep saying it, and I don't want to beat a dead horse because then it becomes glue, but culture drives a lot of it, right? And then, you know, the data's right there in front of you, and everybody in the room, look at the top two. If you look at the top two and you're in either one of those categories, raise your hand. Several people, yeah, they're coming up, right? So, I mean, we've got to address these issues. Culture, we've got to have good culture in the organization, and the pervasiveness of technology is what drives the complexity. The regulatory environment's getting more complex, so we're being told that we need to do stuff. Sometimes we don't even understand why. So I think those two drive the top two.
Can you just say a little bit about what helps get the leadership, like so that number 2 there? Like, I would love to help make that go up in my organization. What should I be telling the people? How do I market cyber in my organization?
So you say organization or within your business unit itself?
No, the organization. I mean,
Yes.
I
So
work in IT and cyber.
yeah, as a CISO, I will tell you, I probably spend more time not in technology because I got a team for that. Literally walking around and having conversations with business leaders to understand, you know, what technology is on your budget, what issues do you have, and reassessing what are the most critical business processes that we have so that we can protect the golden goose and understand where the eggs are in the organization as well. So I probably spend more time speaking with business unit leaders so they can be an advocate so I can help them be productive and be successful as well.
To me, it's relationships, building those relationships, and you can maybe do it throughout enterprise or organization-wide, but sometimes it's built on just one business unit at a time, and to collaborate and kind of form a community within the culture of your environment. And the other thing is most business units say, it's not going to happen to us. This is really not a big deal. It's not a revenue producing. You're not from a revenue producing department, or so, you know, I know what you're saying, and we don't really have the money, and it's really not going to happen to us anyway. So, but when it does, it's a whole different story. So I would just go back to community and try to just drive the relationships.
Speaking of community, so we really try not to just focus on people's complaints about the cybersecurity profession. We want to understand sort of some of the positives about what they're doing, how they're managing their career. So in this case, we're asking, which of the following actions do you believe is the most helpful in the advancement of your cybersecurity career? And this is really important, and I'm sure ISSA manages this all the time. I know ISSA does, is people get into the profession with real enthusiasm for getting into cybersecurity, but then they lose sight of where they want to go. And there's so, as Sean said, you can go into a legal aspect of cybersecurity, you can go into a technical aspect or a business aspect. So in this case, what really helps you advance your career? And it's networking with other cybersecurity professionals. So congratulations, you're all doing that this week. Of course, ISSA is a great avenue to do that locally, wherever you are in the world. Attending more industry and or training events, so here we are again. And joining a cybersecurity professional organization. So that really speaks to RSA, it speaks to ISSA, it speaks to really networking with your peers, understanding what they're doing, learning from your peers. So this is a good advertisement for you too, and I'll let you take it.
Well, I'll tell you, up here in the front of the room is our Chief Operations Officer at ISSA, Betty Burke. Betty and I are co-founders of a committee that came out of the pandemic called the AIM Committee. AIM stands for Apprenticeships, Internships, and Mentorships. And so to address this issue, that committee has grown exponentially over the last several months, where we have chapter leaders and chapter members participating with us to look at what some chapters are doing to address these types of issues. So where are you in your career? Are you a beginner? Are you somewhere, mid-career? Or are you a senior leader? Everyone needs mentorship. And so students coming or trying to break into the industry, maybe internship, less structured than a mentor, right? And then, you know, the whole idea of internships, apprenticeships are structured and they have a long-term commitment between the mentor and the mentee. And we've seen a lot of movement more on the mentorship side than anything else. And you know, Betty and I are committed to continuing to make relationships with other organizations that are influential in these areas. You know, I won't mention the different names, but they're pretty heavy hitters and they're industry recognized. So I think there's a bigger commitment there, and I think that's part of the solution. Curtis?
I do a lot of work with women, and these are not women, they could be women entering the field, but we do a lot of work with women that are transitioning from another career into cybersecurity for that advancement and that interest. And I mean, that's been an ongoing topic that, you know, women are underrepresented. And there was, somebody said something about the bathrooms. There was really a big line into the men's bathroom yesterday, but the women didn't have a line in their bathroom. But we're doing a lot of work with career advancement for women, helping them come into the field and advancing that way. But it's, you know, you guys probably do, you know, do a lot of work networking, and that's, again, what Sean said while we're here. But I would say that all of these are just valid ways to advance.
Yeah, networking is very, very important. You need to get out and talk to people. And we are an industry that is traditionally a bunch of introverts. So I highly encourage you to go out and go not just to conferences, what's going on in your local community. Are you a technical person? Go join a OWASP chapter or a AWS chapter or a Microsoft 365 admin group or DEF CON, you know, chapter. If you're government, I mean, there's chapters to do all kinds of different things. Collaborate with the people in your industry and look for additional resources and network.
Yeah, and I'll just add, with the hype around generative AI at this conference, I don't see querying ChatGPT up there for career advancement or interfacing with chatbots. So I guess it's a human-to-human element that really helps us all.
That chapter will come out next year.
That's right. Someone's working on that as we speak. All right, so I mentioned before that since the beginning of this project, we wanted to understand, is the cybersecurity skills shortage real? Is it getting worse? Is it impacting organizations, and how so, if it is? And so I'm summarizing a lot of data here with some bullet points, but 65% of the organizations, or the 65% of the cybersecurity professionals we surveyed work at organizations that have been impacted by the cybersecurity skills shortage. It was 71% last year. I think it was like 59% the year before. So it's consistently over 50% and up around at least 60%. So we followed up and said, well, what's the impact? Define that impact. And these are the top answers: that increase the staff workload. So we talked about that job satisfaction, people were overwhelmed. Well, they're getting more overwhelmed because of the skills shortage. This is an important one at this show, which again, as I say, is really much a celebration of security technology. They said that the skills shortage has had an impact on their ability, and I'm kind of switching my words here, but their ability to optimize security technology. What that means is I go out and buy some security technology in good faith, and then I never optimize it. I don't learn how to use it appropriately. I'm not configuring it, or I'm not customizing it or tuning my detection rules. So it doesn't matter what you buy, if you don't use it effectively, it's not going to work right. And that, if I don't have the skills or the skill set to do that, that's what happens. And then, of course, staff burnout. 37% of those we surveyed said the cybersecurity skill shortage has gotten worse over the last 2 years. 52% say it's about the same. Very few say it's gotten better. 84% of those that we surveyed said it is extremely difficult difficult or somewhat difficult to recruit and hire. And what I find is that's really true in rural areas, it's really true of smaller organizations, and it's really true in the public sector. And then here are the most acute skill shortage areas. So we said, where do you really have an acute skill shortage? What we heard was emerging technologies like artificial intelligence, and then these other ones have been consistent over the years. Cloud security skills, application security skills, and security analysis and investigation, so that includes SOC analysts, incident responders, threat intelligence analysts, things like that. So there's a lot to digest here, so I'm wondering what your thoughts are.
We've talked about this for several years. To me, we're not doing the job that we should be doing with HR and helping HR understand how to fill these positions, post these positions, how to read between the lines on these positions, how to look for soft skills, how to bring in somebody that doesn't have the exact checkbox of the position you're posting, and to just look at it. And I think that that's part of it. I don't know so much if there's a shortage. If it is, we're not getting the word out the right way. Anthony Blinken talked about the initiative to bring in workers with experience in AI. And he mentioned recruiting from other countries that might be ahead of us in AI development to come and work. That's part of it. I don't know so much I would agree with the shortage. To me, what I see is the disconnect with between the hiring process and the hiring managers, and where they plug into the process and vetting resumes and so forth. And it depends also on your organization's work program and what your initiative is for hiring workers or workers on visas, or that, hiring from other countries, and where you want to get your talent. Sean, you talked about, rural areas. Yes, to me, I think it starts with us having a collaboration with the hiring process. And sometimes we just post the position and say, oh, really? You didn't get, exactly what we're asking for? And we need to look outside the box and think outside the box. There's so much talent if we just look beyond the word match.
And it's a good point, go back to HR, right? What is being posted? My daughter, who's entry level, right? So she loves to write policies. I don't know where that came from, but she's a technical writer. And she went to go look for a job at one of the big companies. Northrop Grumman had a position for entry level that required 8 years of experience and a master's degree. HR is not doing their job either. That is, you don't have to talk to a technology person to realize that an entry-level person is not requiring to have 8 years of experience and a master's degree to write policies, right? So back to your point, Curtis, is you've got to work with HR and other hiring managers to get, articulate the right expectations so that you're getting the right people with the right skill set, the right trade craft to be able to be productive when they come into that job.
Okay, a couple more slides and then we'll take questions. I mentioned that we didn't want to just focus on the downside. We wanted input. And so we had a panel of over 369 cybersecurity professionals. And we asked them, okay, well, what could be done to improve cybersecurity culture? And I'm really interested in your thoughts on this top one. So make managers more accountable for cybersecurity performance. Now, if you think of what the SEC regulations did, that's making at least executives more accountable for cybersecurity performance. I'll let you read the other ones, but I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on that particular one.
So one of the things that we do if we're hired for an assessment engagement, we always look to see how many incidents did you have over the last 4 or 5 years, and then we want to take a look at those, and we look for trends. And in some instances, you'll see trends in areas where innovation, your IT department, your research and development department, certain areas of the business have a more tendency to have more incidents than other areas of the business. And it goes back to culture, right? So if the R&D manager doesn't have a sound, embrace cybersecurity as positive, well, you know, my reflection is going to be the same as the boss. If the boss doesn't care, why should I care? So we go back and we show these trends, and we suggest that maybe that hiring manager or that business unit leader doesn't have the same culture. Therefore, well, how do we fix that? Through a manager. Make it part of his performance evaluation or her performance evaluation. You're going to have to do it for everybody because you can't just pick somebody out. But that is one of those things that we bring back to the business, and we like. So maybe, you know, this person doesn't share that culture, and what did it cost the business? So bring it back, make it a standard across all business units, and hold them accountable that way. Make it part of their performance.
Community, collaboration is part of the culture. Content, I noticed a security awareness response up there. Creativity, and a tone from the top. If you don't have tone from the top, it's going to be very difficult. You're going to have a challenge in improving the culture.
We also asked, and this is the final data slide, what could your organization do to improve its cybersecurity program in total? And so invest in the appropriate resources, that's always on the list, it always is near the top. But then increase the training, and we talked about training, and it's for cybersecurity professionals and IT professionals. So really spread cybersecurity, make it part of the culture of IT as well. And then strive for a better cybersecurity culture throughout. I'm a broken record here, but I'll give you guys the last words here.
Go ahead, Curtis.
Do you guys have a good cybersecurity or a security awareness program within your organization? Yes, no, good. That's you have to reach people in your organizations where they are and what is meaningful to them. You can't just throw out a program and say, here's our program for the year, if it doesn't impact or target the role or reach people where they are. So I think that's a very important. I think these responses are very good, but it takes, like I said, go back to community, you know, and reach people where they are, no matter what their role, from their entry level to the top, and just make it meaningful for them.
Yeah, and you know, the training is number 2, but it's very close to number 1. Training and awareness. So cybersecurity, we said 80% of the business processes are automated, right? Cybersecurity. Remember, there's still 20% left. And so that's the human, which is the number 1 most significant threat, and physical security is that blend as well. So you still have those 2 areas that we have to look at. From your cybersecurity program, you know, going back to Curtis's point, collaboration, community, that's a 100% an effort for whoever your cybersecurity leaders are. You got to get and talk with the rest of the business. You have to not be the person that says no. That's a stigma that we've got to get away from. We're not the office that says no. We're the office that says yes, but we need to do it this way, right? And so, you know, we, even as leaders, we need to continue to embrace a positive perspective to enable the business to be successful. Training, awareness, and culture and community.
Here's the thing. Our attitudes define us. If you're in an organization that finger points, and I would venture to say that everybody's been in that situation where, oh, we didn't do it, you guys need to do it, or you did it wrong, or the finger pointing that goes on. It's the attitude, and I think the way to improve a cybersecurity program is to, like I said, communicate, but our attitudes really define us, and it's just, we're not alone, we're all in it together, and just find a way to be unified.
So we have about 5 minutes left. I'm going to let my 2 distinguished guests wrap it up. I'll just want to say thank you for attending, and common questions I'll answer right now is these slides will be available on the RSA website probably next week, I would say, or the week after. There is an ebook that we will publish that will be free download. That will be later on, probably either, I'd say in the June time frame. And then if you have any questions afterwards, please feel free to come up. But Sean and Curtis, can you wrap up?
Well, I'd just like to thank you, John, because this is excellent information. It's excellent data, and thank you for taking the time and you're sharing your expertise to put something like this together for all of us, no matter where we're from and where we're located, that we can kind of see a view that represents all of us as professionals. And I think that probably every one of us can say, yes, I can identify with lots of things that you've put together. So I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I'll hit the same thing, John. I just did a quick around the room. This is a huge conference with thousands of people here, and we've got almost 100 people in this room. So that tells me that there's interest in the information that we're trying to pass on to the community. We don't do it without data scientists and researchers such as yourself collaborating with an organization such as ISSA to be able to represent our industry, give you the information, and encourage you to participate next year when this survey comes out. We want to know what's going on. We want to know what those trends are. So thanks again, John. Thank you, Kurt.
My pleasure.
Do you guys have questions? Do we have time for one or two?
One or two quick questions.
It's early.
It is. It's the morning session.
Okay. Is this one working? I can't hear anything.
We can hear you. I'll repeat your question.
Okay. First, I appreciate all the pink on stage, guys. I have two questions if nobody else has things. My first is about the data. I'm curious if you guys break it down between actual careers in cybersecurity, maybe analysts versus engineers, operations versus architecture.
We have some of that data, and we do cross-tab it. We don't have that represented here, but give me your card, and I can work with you on that.
I know we do separate some for CISOs, right? So there is a trend on that because we want to know what the CISOs in leadership are doing, but we don't go down into that level. But you know, we could take a look at that.
Also, you guys talked a lot about training in various ways. A couple of academics on stage. Do you have an opinion on the sort of sudden prevalence of bachelor's degrees, not in computer science or in IT, but specifically in cybersecurity?
Well, so I will tell you this, and I'm a big advocate in the academia region, is stop making everybody write papers for every single class. They got to get hands-on. They've got to experience the technology. Papers are great, but it shouldn't be every single thing that we're doing. So I would say that it needs to evolve to address some of these issues that we're talking about. Curtis?
Was your question the type of degree or the field or a degree versus a non-degree?
I think, do you think some of these gaps that people are saying with skills and people that they can find can be filled by people specifically studying cybersecurity?
If we do some of the things I just recommended.
Okay. So it depends on the quality.
Yeah, and so I got hired by a university to go in and analyze their their curriculum, and we threw all the books out, and we've got a guy from NSA, we got a guy from CISA, and myself that helped develop a program that's hands-on in what you're going to do when you get into the industry.
Yeah, and I'll just add that as an example, Indiana University has something called the OmniSOC, and it's actually a collaborative SOC that they do with other Big Ten universities and other institutions, and students can participate in there. And that's what Sean just talked about, that is the hands-on experience that employers are going to look for.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.